Thank you. Good afternoon, students. Good afternoon, Tej Prakash. Good afternoon, Somya. Good afternoon, Almaz. Good afternoon to one and all. So we were discussing on the topic of invoice, debit note, and credit note. What should be the format? What are the content which should be there? Correct. So those things we were discussing. And few students felt that there will be a spillover of the class and we will have a class session on Thursday also. But last Thursday and this Thursday, both these Thursdays, I am not available. So we will not be having a session. So if anybody has any doubts, yeah, could you give a brief on e-invoicing? Correct. So any other questions, if you have, please feel free to post it so we can have a discussion. We will have a discussion first on the e-invoicing. So basically, yeah, let me just share the screen, then explain you. So briefly, we'll touch about e-invoicing, which we had already discussed in the last session, but some clarity is required, is what I understand. So we'll discuss what is e-invoicing. E-invoicing is basically what you have to understand the background of this. So what used to happen is people used to generate invoice and give it to the customer. And with that, customer can claim the credit. No, he cannot claim the credit. He has to also satisfy the conditions of Section 16, right? One of those conditions was that invoice should be uploaded on the GSTR1 of the supplier. Once he uploads, then it will appear in the GSTR2B of the receiver, and then he can claim the credit. So what was happening was invoices were being raised, receiver would claim the credit, but the transaction was never reported to the GST at all. How they will not report? Because it has to appear in the 2B. Correct. If it has to appear in the 2B, they will have to report it in the GSTR1. So they will report it in the GSTR1, but they never used to report it in the GSTR3B. To plug this gap that transactions are reported only in GSTR1 and not in 3B, and the volume of transactions, whatever used to happen, was reported only at the end of the month after the transaction was getting completed. So that was the reason government thought that no, this reporting which is happening at the end of the month, by then lot of transactions of this fake invoice is getting completed and we are not able to catch them. So they brought this e-invoicing. E-invoicing means once you raise your normal invoice, that has to get uploaded on the e-invoicing portal immediately. आपने इनवॉइस आज रेस किया, आपको तुरंत ई इनवॉइसिंग पोर्टल पे उसका डिटेल्स डालना है. Then there will be a acknowledgement which will be coming out, which is called as invoice reference number, which is popularly known as IRN, invoice reference number. Once that is getting generated, then your reporting to the government is happening. So there the responsibility ends, but that is only first part. But after that, all the other things will continue. Yes, Kavita, you have any question? Okay. So the invoice, what we generate from software, is that called invoice? No, that is not an e-invoice because that is your accounting software. What is generated from the government's portal, that is called as e-invoicing. Whether invoice is generated in a central server is an e-invoice? No, that is also not an e-invoice. E-invoice does not mean generation of the invoice from a central portal of the tax department. It doesn't mean that also. So what it is a process wherein your transactions you are entering on the e-invoicing portal and generating from that. That is a e-invoice. Um, this is the background which I was discussing. Yes, the e-invoice being implemented by the tax department across the globe consists of two important parts, namely generation of the invoice in a standard format. So it serves two objectives. It provides the invoicing in a standard format and reporting to the central system. That is, government will have transaction for that, will have a trail for that. Manual data entry will have a lot of problems. To avoid that, e-invoicing is there. This is again general information. Yeah. Now the applicability. Who is the e-invoicing applicable? As we had discussed in the last session, that it was from 2022 10 crores, but this has got amended. So now the present limit which is applicable for you is any person who is having a turnover more than 5 crores, he will have to generate a e-invoice. But e-invoice on what all transactions we have to do generate whenever you do any B2B transactions. That is when you are supplying it to a recipient who is registered, then e-invoice is required. Because if he is unregistered, he will not claim the credit. So there is no burden on a person who is selling to the end customer to raise a e-invoice. If he's selling it to another registered person, then definitely yes. So B2B transactions, B2G, when you're doing any supply to a government, then also you have to raise a e-invoice. All your exports, you will have to raise the e-invoice. Supplies through e-commerce operators and supplies on which RCM, reverse charge transactions, which is getting attracted, there you will raise a e-invoice. But it is not applicable for the following transactions. What transactions are excluded? For any transactions which is of import of goods or import of services and persons receiving supply on which RCM is payable. So if you are importing something, you don't have to raise a e-invoice. You're importing services, still no invoice. You're receiving some services on which you have to pay reverse charge. There you pay reverse charge, but for that e-invoice is not required because that is the supplier's responsibility. Suppose an advocate provides some services to you. Okay, advocate will raise an invoice and he will raise an e-invoice. You will pay the GST, but you still don't have to raise an e-invoice because it is the supplier's responsibility. Okay. What all category of documents you have to report in e-invoice? Your normal tax invoice, your debit note, credit note, these are to be entered. So only three things: invoice, debit note, and credit note. The following not to be entered, that is delivery challan, bill of supply, any transaction with job work, that is not required for now. Exemptions, SEZ units, not for a SEZ developer. There are two things within a SEZ. One is SEZ developer and SEZ unit. SEZ units are not required, but SEZ developer, he will have to generate an e-invoice. Insurance and banking company is not required. GTA supplying services, supply of passenger transport services, and person supplying services by way of any admission to an exhibition of cinematographic films in a multiplex screens. Here, it is not required. A government department and local authority, this is the new addition. So any government department and a local authority, once they are registered, they also are not required to raise a e-invoice. However, a person who is raising a normal invoice and his threshold is crossing, but because of this exemption, he is not raising e-invoice, then he has to give a declaration that we hereby declare that though our aggregate turnover in any preceding financial year is more than the aggregate turnover notified, we are not required to prepare an invoice in terms of the provisions of the said sub-rule because of this exemption. So they are not required. That is what declaration they will have to give. So IRP, I showed you the process, right? So how does the system work? This is a e-invoice portal wherein you should have a separate username and password. This is different from the GST portal. So if you have a login access for GST portal, that's fine. But for e-invoicing portal, you need to have a separate login. Generate the e-invoice registration form and things like that. Once you register, go to the dashboard and generate a e-invoice. So this is called as e-invoice entry form. In this entry form, you will mention the details of whether it is B2B, B2G or export, then the subcategory, whether it is regular sales or reverse charge sales, or if it is transaction through an e-commerce operator. What are the documents? Type will be invoice, debit note, credit note. Mention the invoice number, the invoice date, the transaction type. From where you are billing, this address will come automatically from your GST registration. To whom you are billing, mention the GSTIN. From that, the other person's address will appear. The item details, what is the item you're wanting to raise an invoice for, that will get added up here. So once you enter these things and click on generate e-invoice, you'll get an e-invoice which will have a IRN number, which is a long hash, then the acknowledgement number, the date, and all the details what you have entered. So this itself you can take a print and give it to the customer, or you can also use this for the e-waybill purpose, because from here all the details will go to the e-waybill portal, because e-invoice is different, e-waybill is different. Once you put all your details here, e-waybill will get auto-populated. From there, click on generate, put the vehicle number, that should be sufficient. Okay, so this is how the e-waybill or e-invoicing works. The next question is, can a registered supplier under composition levy issue a consolidated bill of supply if the value of goods is less than 200? Yes, because it says any registered person. So a composition supplier is also a registered person. He can also give a consolidated bill of supply if the value of the goods is less than 200 rupees. Generating a unique ARN number for each e-invoice. Correct. You have to generate a unique ARN number, IRN number, not ARN, IRN number for each e-invoice. So you have an option of bulk upload. You can give all the details on a bulk model, and then separate IRN will get generated for each of your invoices. So SEZ developer, except if it has turnover more than 5 crore exempt, but this limit not apply to SEZ unit. No, SEZ unit only this exemption will apply. For SEZ developer, no limit will apply. So SEZ developer, he will have to raise an invoice if his turnover crosses 5 crores, but SEZ unit is always exempt. Please give example for consolidated revised invoice of 2,50,000 per state. So you have raised an invoice. Now the invoice value was say 3 lakh rupees, which is more than 2,50,000 rupees. So there you cannot give a consolidated revised invoice. You have to raise a separate revised invoice for that value. Okay. So when you can give consolidated invoice if the value is less than 2,50,000 rupees. Yes, delivery challan is required for stock transfer even in case of interstate. Yes, there also delivery challan will be required. Supplier, composite supplier cannot issue tax invoice. That's right. That's where the question was, can a composition supplier issue bill of supply? Yes, can issue a bill of supply. He will not issue a tax invoice. Any more questions on invoicing? What is the difference between SEZ unit and a developer? Okay, very good question. So a SEZ is a special area, right? Wherein a government has said that, okay, you can set up a SEZ park here. Now, who will do that? Who will do the development of that? That development of that whole area will be done by a developer. So the person who develops the SEZ area is called a SEZ developer. And within the developer, within the area which is developed, there'll be multiple units will be coming up. Say Nokia is opening, iPhone will open its factory, Samsung will open its factory. So these multiple people who come and set up their factory there, they are called as SEZ units. And all the units put together are the person who is developing this SEZ. He is called as a SEZ developer. Okay. So the units, individual units are called the SEZ units. And the person who develops this whole thing is called a SEZ developer. Correct. So for both inter and interstate stock transfer, delivery challan is required because there commercially there is no requirement of an invoice. Invoice you will raise once you sell something to a customer, but within your own entities, if you're supplying, you will not raise an invoice, you will raise a delivery challan. Correct, Tej Prakash. He will raise a bill of supply. So the value of 2,50,000, if the total of suppose 10 customers are there having invoice value of 2,50,000, then consolidate tax invoice, not different customers, same customer. If he is having 10 different sales, okay, and to one customer, then he will be, well, then he will able to consolidate those small invoices. Clear? Okay. So if there are no more questions, we can get into today's actual topic, which we have, which is accounts and records under GST. So for one customer, each state is have different consolidate invoice. Yes, for each customer, because if you are giving B2C, then you can consolidate. But if it is B2B, for each customer, you will have to give a consolidate invoice according to his purchases, what he made. SEZ develop like Adani development. Correct. That is an example of a developer. Now within that Adani SEZ, you will have units like say Samsung. They have set up their factory. So Samsung will be called as a SEZ unit and Adani will be called as a SEZ developer. So whether payment voucher will be issued if the supplier is registered or unregistered? Payment voucher, whenever you make any payment, so generally it will be for a unregistered supplier. If you're making payment to an unregistered supplier, then you will raise a payment voucher. Because for other transactions, supplier will already raise a GST invoice. Their payment voucher is not required. Wherever it is to an unregistered person, then you will raise a payment voucher. So that is for a unregistered supplier generally, which raise the payment voucher. What is revised tax invoice? Dhanush, generally when we raise an invoice, we can't revise it. But only in one instance, the law allows you to revise the invoice. That is when the supplier is, when the supplier has applied for registration and he has not got the registration on time. Okay. That is when he wanted to get it, he's not got it. There's a delay, right? Because once you apply, the registration takes time. In between, you get the registration number and you have supplied, right? When you have applied for the registration and you have not yet got it, for that period, you can revise your invoice. So only in that situation, the law permits कि आप revise invoice बेच सकते हो. Is quick response code required for all registered person? No, there is a limit, right? We had discussed on the limit. So only if that person crosses that limit, then he will have to raise a invoice with a QR code. Dynamic QR code, the limit is still 500 crores or above. So if the supplier is supplying, which is valued more than 500 crores, okay, then he will have to give a dynamic QR code on his invoices. So it is written that IRN is embedded in the QR code shall be extracted and printed on the invoice. Means QR code is printed or IRN number is printed on invoice. Both. IRN number will also be printed and QR code also will be printed in the IRN. What is dynamic QR code? Dynamic QR code means a code which is changing so that nobody can do any fraudulent transaction. That's why they're saying dynamic QR. Okay. So we've kind of clarified all the queries with respect to invoice, debit note, and credit note. Now we'll discuss the chapter for today, which is accounts and records under GST. Okay. What is your doubt on this? It could be that I am registered under GST. Now, what records I should maintain? And for what, till what time should I maintain it? How long should I keep it? And what all data should I keep it? These are the questions which will get addressed in this chapter of accounts and records under GST. Okay. Now, tell me which is the most powerful section in GST? In the GST law, what is the most powerful section? Yeah, any guess which is the most powerful section in the GST law? Come on. If you don't know the section number, it's fine, but what does it say? Which section will have to be most powerful? Devu Mitra is saying section 16. Ishan Best is saying section 24, 24. Charging section. Okay. Section 11. Section 7. Okay. The correct answer for this is no. These are all the procedural sections, what you're saying, right? You have to comply with it. Section 7, supply. If their supply will fall, check section 7 and see whether it's correct. Then, if there is any kind of ITC, so we will follow section 16. That's fine. But to my mind, what is the most powerful section in GST is none of these sections which are mentioned. The powerful section is section 59, which talks about self-assessment, which means that you are the assessing officer to do your own assessment. Okay. And it says that you are the assessing officer. Every registered person shall pay tax issued. Every registered person self-assess the tax payable under this act and furnish a return for each tax period as is specified under section 39, which means that you have to assess your own taxes, what is payable. Okay. So the officer will not come every day or whenever the transaction happens. You don't have to get any approval from the officer. See, I'm raising the invoice. You don't have to get any approval for clearance of the goods. Why? Because of this section, which is very important section, section 59, which says that every registered person shall self-assess the taxes which is payable under this act and furnish a return for each tax period. You have to self-assess. You have to don't wait for others' assessment. You have to do self-assessment. So every person shall self-assess the taxes payable under this act and furnish a return for each tax period based on your own assessment. How do you conclude your assessment? The assessment we know under Income Tax Act results in a notice and then the order. But for self-assessment, whatever you do self-assessment, that has to get concluded through a return because you don't have to pass an order. Yours is self-assessment. You are doing the self-assessment. and declare that in the return. So your return is your assessment, right? Such a huge power of their assessment officer has let gone and they have given it to you, like every taxpayer, because section 59 says self-assessment and every registered person should self-assess. Now, how does this assessment happens? You will take the supply, you know what is the supply, what is the value of supply. You have the law with you to determine the rate of tax and file your returns. So you are doing your own assessment by your own self. Okay. So once we get that, yes, the government has given us a right or the power to do the assessment of our own self, we have to do it properly. After that, if the officer finds that that assessment is wrong, then he can correct it, right? That's why they will do a adjudication, they will do a audit, right? But assessment happens by us, which is a self-assessment. Now, as per the above section, every taxpayer has to do an assessment of his books, of his own books. Okay. As per section 59, every taxpayer will have to do an assessment of his own books and records, and basis that he will have to file his returns. After self-assessment, compliance verification. Now, whether we have done the filing correctly, whether we have filed itself or no, whether we have filed it within due, after self-assessment, self compliance verification. Okay. After you finish your self-assessment, there'll be a second round of compliance, which is called as compliance verification, which is done by the department through scrutiny of the returns and or investigation. That is, they can do scrutiny and investigation together, or you can just do your assessment. The compliance verification is done through documentary checks, which means that how they will do the verification through checking of these documents. So the compliance verification is done through documentary checks. That is, they will ask for documents and basis the values, basis the documents what you will submit, they will do their verification. The compliance verification requires proper accounts and records to be maintained by the taxpayer. So you have done your assessment and you have filed the returns. How will the officer get to know? So during assessment, they will call for or they will ask for verification. Okay. The compliance verification requires proper accounts and records to be maintained by the taxpayer. If you have proper accounts and records, only then assessment can be done. If you do not have proper accounts and records, then you cannot do the assessment. Correct? Okay. Now, where should the books and accounts be maintained? That's the first question. Where will you maintain it? It should be maintained at the principal place of business. Okay. Whichever is your primary place of business, you have to maintain their accounts there. So if you're doing a transaction in, say, Bangalore and branches in Delhi and Mumbai, but where is the head office? The head office is in Bangalore. So you there at Bangalore, you should maintain. So this is the principal place of business. So wherever he is carrying out the business, which is his principal place of business. How do you know which is the place of business, principal place of business? Where is, how do you get to know? If I give you a GST number of a person, right? How do you know what is his principal place of business? Okay. So my question is, what is the principal place of business? How do you know? Some partly right questions, some right, some mixed code. State code, no. Correct. So in the registration certificate, you have an option when you apply for registration. You have an option to select principal place of business and additional place of business. So that place where you have taken the registration directly and called it as main principal place of business, then that will become the principal place of business. Right. The primary location of the business, which is mentioned in the GST certificate, is the principal place of business. So all other places will become an additional place of business. Got it? Okay. So we understood the primary place of business and other places will be called as additional place of business. So wherever the person is having the principal place of business, there all the books has to be maintained. And apart from this, this is very important. A responsibility is also cast on the owner or the operator of the warehouse or godowns or any other place used for storage of goods to maintain records, even if not registered. Okay. So even is also cast on the owner or the operator, a person or owner of a warehouse or a godown. Now somebody is transporting goods and it is illegal goods. Now he is transported the goods, and when the officer is asking for penalty, he is not coming up, saying that no, I don't want to pay the penalty. Now the transporter will say that supplier is not coming in. What do I do? There you will have to say that yes, Shiv Chaudhary.
Sir, please max your volume, sir. You are not audible.
Sorry.
Sir, you are not audible. Please max your volume.
Okay, now it is clear.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we were talking about where should the books of account be maintained. Accounts has to be maintained. Now, where should it be maintained? It should be maintained at the principal place of business. And the responsibility is also cost on others. So if you're transporting some goods and that goods are lying in a godown and it is illegal goods. Now, when the officer asks, the godown person doesn't know. That's why what happens is the responsibility is cast on the owner or the operator of the warehouse or any place which is used for storage of the goods. The person who is the owner of that premises where you're storing the goods, he is also responsible to maintain records of that goods, not the complete one, but to that extent. And accounts can be maintained in either electronic form or non-electronic form. Of course, when you have a threshold of 5 crores or above for raising invoice, so that is for an e-invoice threshold. But here there is no threshold. You can raise invoice on the GST online, but okay, you have to maintain accounts or no, because one is e-invoicing, that is 5 crores, but here there is no limit. If you want, you can maintain manually or you can maintain it on a electronic mode. Both options are possible. Okay. So e-invoice has to be run, but accounts can be maintained in either a non-electronic form. There's no prescribed format for maintaining the accounts. The accounts can be maintained in a general format, like whatever accounting principles will follow, the generally accepted accounting principle, the accounting standards what we follow, that should be sufficient. There is no separate accounting methodology which is defined under this law. So books of accounts relating to APOB is also kept in PPOB. Yes. Whatever is the books of additional place of business, that is also kept at the principal place of business. Sir, warehouse or godown is not principal place of business. Then why to maintain this? So that you don't have to maintain your records there, Asta, definitely. But the invoice, those details has to be maintained by the warehouse keeper, because he has the control of it, and the officer wants to know who has the control. The warehouse owner has it. So that warehouse owner should maintain books to the extent of the goods which he is refacing and the goods which he is paying it back. Sir, should unregistered person also maintain books of accounts? No. Only unregistered person who is having a warehouse, there he will have to maintain the books of accounts. Otherwise, a person who is supplying, who is not registered, who is unregistered, or who is not a taxable person, that is, he is unregistered because of his threshold limit, then he should not maintain. But if he crosses the threshold, then he will have to maintain complete books of accounts. Now, when we say it has to be maintained at the principal place of business, or we are saying principal place of business or additional place of business. Now, what is the definition of this place of business? Place of business means a place from where the business is ordinarily carried on, and it includes a warehouse or a godown or any other place from where a taxable, any other place where a taxable person stores his goods and supplies or receives goods or services or both. Now, what is a place of business? A place of business means a place where the business is ordinarily carried out, where he does a lot of transactions. That is the place which is known by the customers. That will become the place of business. And it also, so suppose say a person is not having a fixed place of business. He's carrying out the transactions from his house, so that his residence will become the place of business. It is not necessary that he should have a store, he should have a showroom. Any place where he is doing the business, that is his place of business. And it also includes a warehouse, a godown, wherever we store the goods, right? Sometimes we store the goods at a different place because our place, we do not have some space, or the main office does not have a space. It is just a showroom, but they are stored in a warehouse or a godown. So that will also be treated as a place of business, or any other place where a taxable person stores his goods, supplies or receives goods or services or both. That is the called as place of business. And a place where a taxable person maintains his books of accounts. Say he is doing a business at one place, but his accounting or the finance department is in a different place. So that will be also treated as a place of business, because doing business and maintaining book of account both are important. So books of accounts are maintained at a back office, right? So that is also to be added as a place of business. And a place where a taxable person is engaged in a business through an agent. Okay, so directly he's not doing the transactions, but he's doing the transactions through an agent. So that agent's place will also be treated as a place of business. Got it? तो अगर मैं हिंदी में समझाऊं इसको, जहां पे आपका बिजनेस कर रहे हो वो तो प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस है ही, उसके अलावा आपका वेयर हाउस या गोडाउन जहां पे आपके गुड्स आप स्टोर करते हो, वो भी प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस हो जाएगा. थर्ड क्राइटेरिया है, जब आप बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स दूसरी जगह मेंटेन करते हो तो वो दूसरी जगह आपका प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस बन जाएगा. और थर्ड है, जब आप किसी ट्रांजैक्शन आपके एजेंट के थ्रू करते हो तो फिर जो एजेंट का एड्रेस है वो भी प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस बन जाए। क्लियर? राइट। नेक्स्ट चलते हैं सेक्शन 35 में क्या बोलता है ये। द अकाउंट्स आर टू बी मेंटेन एट द प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस एंड इन केस ऑफ मल्टीपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस द अकाउंट्स रिलेटिंग टू ईच ऑफ प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस शैल बी केप्ट एट द रेस्पेक्टिव प्लेस। सो किसी ने अभी पूछा था कि सर एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस का भी मेन में रहना चाहिए। नहीं। ओके। तो मेन प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस में प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस का ही रहेगा और जो एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस है उनके रिकॉर्ड्स वहीं पे मेंटेन होंगे। I had told that no, it has to be mentioned at the principal place of business. Nahi, it has to be mentioned or kept at the such additional place of business. So the accounts relating to each place of business shall be kept at the respective place of business. Okay. Next, if any documents, registers, books of accounts belonging to a registered person, आपके फर्म का बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स मिल गया है at any premises other than the registered place, तो आपके सेल्स बुक, आपके परचेज बुक मिल गए बाजू वाले के दुकान में, गलती से नहीं, आप इंटेंशनली केप्ट इट, सो दैट प्लेस विल बिकम अ एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस बिकॉज दैट प्रेमाइसेस आल्सो शैल बी प्रेज्यूम टू बी मेंटेन बाय द रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन। आपने उसको छुपा दिया है, राइट, एंड यू आर डूइंग सम ट्रांजैक्शंस देयर, और वहां पे आपके बुक्स मिल गए, क्योंकि गुड्स वगैरह नहीं मिलेंगे क्योंकि गुड्स आते हैं और चले जाते हैं, बट देयर योर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स आर बीन एस्टैब्लिश्ड कि वहां पे है आपके बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स, देन दैट विल आल्सो बी ट्रीटेड एज योर प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस। तो इसका मतलब क्या है, जो भी ट्रांजैक्शंस करते हैं चोरी छुपे विदाउट डिस्क्लोजिंग योर प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस, उनको अवॉइड करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि वेयर एवर वी फाइंड कि आपके बुक्स और रिकॉर्ड्स कुछ भी है वहां पे, देन दैट विल आल्सो बी treated as a additional place of business. So in case of you having multiple places of business, the accounts relating to each place of business shall be kept at the respective place of business concern. And if any documents are found elsewhere, that will also be treated as your business premises itself. Sir, in case the assessee has similar business like branch, right, and warehouse, branch and warehouse, in that case, it will be assessee discretion to decide problem. No. Now, if he has a branch, the accounts of the branch has to be mentioned, maintained at the branch itself. And if it is your own warehouse, you have added that as an additional place of business. So for that also, you have to maintain it. So the other point was where you do not maintain it, then the warehouse holder will have be responsible, saying that, no, I don't know what I've kept it over there. I don't have it. I don't have the records of it. Then the warehouse keeper will be responsible, saying that he is not maintaining and I'm not able to trace out him. There, the warehouse keeper will have to be answerable. Correct. So if I mistakenly kept there, what do you mean by mistakenly? So if you're doing any sale, can you tell you have done it mistakenly? No. Similarly, if you have kept books of accounts completely over there, right, then you will have to prove that it is by mistake. If you cannot prove, then the officer will assume that that is your additional place of business. So where will BOA relate, books of accounts related to fixed establishment be maintained? So every fixed establishment is different. So if you are treating the fixed establishment as a branch, then the transactions of that branch has to be maintained there. Okay. But if you are not treating it as a branch, and if you have taken, say, one registration for all the 10 branches, then you will have to maintain for the additional place of business there itself, because say you have a showroom in the main city, and in the B city or the grade 2 grade cities, you have additional branches. So for each of those branches, the records has to be maintained at that branch itself. Okay. So for anything related to a fixed establishment where you're doing your transactions, those books has to be maintained at that fixed establishment itself. Now, unless proved otherwise, if any documents, registers, or any books of accounts belonging to a registered person are found at any premises, as we have discussed, they shall be presumed to be maintained by the said registered person. The term books and accounts are not defined in the Act, which means we have to take the general meaning, which means whatever we know that the transaction details are recorded in a document, that document is called books of accounts. The registered person now says that has an option to keep and maintain accounts and other records in electronic form, which means that there is a no compulsion that you have to maintain tally or you have to maintain it any other software. If it's an optional thing, if you can maintain the accounts in a manual format, you can do it. But no, you need it in a fully computerized format. That is also fine. Okay, you can maintain accounts in electronic form or non-electronic form. You got it? Now, what are the records? Separate accounts shall be required to be maintained by a single person in respect of each of the GSTINs operative during the year. If you have 10 different GSTI number, then for each of those, you have to mention separate books of accounts. Now, what are the list of accounts which you have to maintain? You have to have a true and correct account of the following. What is that? If you are a manufacturer, then you should have details of production or manufacture of the goods. You should have a list of inward and outward supply of goods. So if it is manufacturer, first will apply. For a non-manufacturer, the rest of the things will apply. You have to have details of inward and outward supply of goods or services or both. So if you're a trader, what are the purchase registers? You have to have a record of all your purchases and all your sales. So list of inward and outward supply of goods or services. Then stock records of goods. What are the stock which has been maintained? Daily, how you are maintaining. The stock record also has to be maintained. Then input tax credit availed. Any ITC what you're availing, that detail that is called as input tax register. So you have to mention a input tax register. Then output tax payable and paid. What is your input you have availed and what is your output? In output, it have payable and paid. Okay. And any other particulars as may be prescribed. So if by notification if they prescribe, then that also has to be maintained. So what all, again, to recapitulate, accounts and records, what are to be maintained? You should maintain a true and correct account of the following: production or manufacturing of the goods, inward and outward supply of goods. This will apply even for a manufacturer. So he will take raw materials, process it and sell it. So all the stock records of the raw materials has to be maintained. All the particulars of inward and outward. Then what is the stock is maintaining? The stock has to be maintained so that any kind of surprise stock verification has to be done. That can be done. So you have to maintain a stock of the goods. What is the ITC availed? What is your output tax, which is payable and paid, and any kind of records by the prescribed rules. Okay. So these are the accounts and records which every registered person will have to maintain. The commissioner, section 35, which we are discussing, says that a commissioner is given a power to notify a class of persons to maintain additional records. Apart from this specific category of people, say builders, they will tell for builders, you have to mention separate records. So that commissioner has a power and he can permit a class of taxable person to maintain records in any other manner. if he believes that they are not in a position to keep and maintain the accounts in accordance with this section. So if an application is being made, then he will give that power. He has the power to give the relaxation to a class of taxable persons, not to an individual taxable person, to a class or to a category of taxable persons, saying that, okay, like for this people who are going to movie theaters, they are given a relaxation that if you don't give an invoice also, it is fine because the ticket itself is sufficient, right? Like that, they can give relaxation and say that if certain class of people are not able to maintain, then we will give them the relaxation. हिंदी में भी बोलिए. हाँ, पवन, कमिश्नर के पास पावर है. फर्स्ट तो हमको ये जो रिकॉर्ड्स है वो मेंटेन करनी पड़ेंगी. क्या है? आपके जो प्रोडक्शन के रिकॉर्ड्स है वो मेंटेन कीजिए. फिर आपके इनवर्ड एंड आउटवर्ड सप्लाई उसके रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन कीजिए. फिर जो गुड्स है उसके स्टॉक रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन कीजिए. फिर इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट, जो आपने इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट अवेल किए हैं उसके रिकॉर्ड्स. फिर आउटपुट टैक्स जो आपको पेएबल है, मतलब आपके सेल्स रिकॉर्ड, आप जब सेल्स करेंगे तो उसके रिकॉर्ड्स. और फिर जो भी स्पेसिफाई रूल्स में कुछ भी उनके अलावा बोलते हैं तो उसको भी मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. तो ये 5 तो आपको इमीडिएटली कंफर्म सबको मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. फिर बोलते हैं कमिश्नर अगर ये देखते हैं कि कुछ कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल है उनको स्पेशल रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे या एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे, तो वो स्पेसिफाई करेंगे, वो भी मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे. सो जो भी एडिशनल अकाउंट्स और डॉक्यूमेंट्स है वो भी कमिश्नर स्पेसिफाई कर सकते हैं कि वो आप मेंटेन कीजिए. या फिर वो एक क्लास ऑफ रिलैक्सेशन भी देख सकते हैं कि ठीक है, आप जैसे स्टॉक का रिकॉर्ड मेंटेन मत कीजिए या स्टॉक के रिकॉर्ड आप डेली नहीं मंथली मेंटेन कीजिए. वो कमिश्नर के पास पावर है रिलैक्सेशन के लिए. ठीक है. नाउ एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स टू बी मेंटेन्ड, इसके अलावा जो हमने लिस्ट दी है ये एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे. सो द लॉ सेज दैट अपार्ट फ्रॉम द बेसिक यू हैव टू मेंटेन the following additional record, which is the goods or services which is imported or exported. Okay, whatever goods you import or export, that also you have to maintain, because on import we claim ITC and on exports we get the zero rated benefit. So you have to maintain a details account of the goods and services what you are importing and the goods and services what you are exporting. Then any supplies which is attracting payment of tax on reverse charge mechanism, RCM, क्योंकि you have to pay, RCM liability is on you, so you have to maintain a record of all the transactions on which you have to pay RCM. ठीक है. तो जो भी रिवर्स चार्ज मैकेनिज्म है वो अपने को पे करना है. सप्लायर तो आपको इनवॉइस दे देगा, लेकिन क्या क्या कैटेगरी पे रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना है इसके लिए भी आपको एक अलग रजिस्टर मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. उसे कहते हैं रिवर्स चार्ज मैकेनिज्म का रजिस्टर. ओके, अलॉन्ग विद द रेलेवेंट डॉक्यूमेंट्स, मतलब सप्लायर अगर इनवॉइस देता है तो इनवॉइस, बिल ऑफ सप्लाई देता है तो बिल ऑफ सप्लाई, डिलीवरी चलान, क्रेडिट नोट, डेबिट नोट, रिसिप्ट वाउचर, पेमेंट वाउचर, ये सब आपको मेंटेन करना है. क्योंकि ये वैसे भी आप जनरेट कर ही रहे हो तो फिर इसका समरी बना देना. ठीक है. देन सेपरेट अकाउंट ऑफ एडवांसेस रिसीव्ड, पेड एंड एडजस्टमेंट देयर ऑफ, क्योंकि जीएसटी क्या है? जीएसटी पेएबल है सर्विसेज पे either on raising the invoice or receipt of advance, whichever is earlier. ठीक है. तो अगर आपको एडवांस आ गया है तब उसके टाइम भी आपको जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा. करेक्ट. तो जो भी आपको एडवांस रिसीव हुआ है या आपने एडवांस पे किया है और जिस एडवांस को आपने इनवॉइस के साथ एडजस्ट किया है उसका भी आपको एक अलग से अकाउंट मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. देन नेम्स एंड कंप्लीट एड्रेस ऑफ सप्लायर्स from whom he has received the goods or services which is chargeable to tax under the act. ठीक है. जो भी सप्लायर है जिससे आप खरीदते हो, बिकॉज आप किससे परचेज कर रहे हो उसका रिकॉर्ड भी मेंटेन करना जरूरी है, क्योंकि आपका आईटीसी इसके ऊपर टिका हुआ है. योर इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट इज डिपेंडेंट फ्रॉम द सप्लायर. तो सप्लायर का जीएसटीआई नंबर, उसका नाम, the invoice number, invoice date, क्या HSN में आपने परचेज किया है, कितना GST चार्ज किया है, इसको कहते हैं इनपुट टैक्स रजिस्टर। तो ये भी आपको मेंटेन करना है। देन नेम एंड कंप्लीट एड्रेस ऑफ द पर्सन टू हुम ही हैज सप्लाई, आपके कस्टमर्स के रिकॉर्ड्स भी मेंटेन करने चाहिए। तो ये डिटेल्स है जो आपको कंपल्सरली एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स है। जो फर्स्ट स्लाइड में बताया था वो बेसिक रिकॉर्ड्स, ये है एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स जो आपको मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे। फिर एक और एडिशनल रिकॉर्ड्स है द कंप्लीट एड्रेस ऑफ द प्रीमाइसेस वेयर गुड्स आर स्टोर्ड, जहां पर भी आपके गुड्स आपने स्टोर किए गए हैं, जो जो लोकेशन में आप स्टोर करते हो उसका भी पूरे लिस्ट रहना चाहिए। सपोज एक जैसे हमने देखा है प्रैक्टिकली कि एक मेडिकल कंपनी है, फार्मेसी कंपनी है, वो बहुत एक ही स्टेट में 20 या 25 जगह पर अपने स्टॉक रखती है। तो हमें सभी 20 जगहों पे उस रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट में इंक्लूड करना पड़ता है, क्योंकि जहां पर भी आपके स्टॉक मेंटेन है उसका डिटेल्स आपको रहना चाहिए। तो उनके एड्रेसेस, जहां जो भी प्रेमाइसेस है, उनके डिटेल्स आपके पास रहने चाहिए, ताकि अगर गवर्नमेंट को कुछ सर्च करना पड़ेगा तो उसके बेसिस पे कर सकते हैं। राइट, वो तो सेकेंडरी ऑप्शन हो गया, लेकिन द लॉ सेज दैट, लॉ बोलता है कि आपके पास जो भी एडिशनल प्लेस है उन सब के डिटेल्स रहने चाहिए। However, if any taxable goods are found to be stored at any place other than those declared without the cover of a valid document, then the proper officer shall determine the amount of tax payable on such goods as if the goods have been supplied by the registered person. Suppose आपने एक additional place लिया है लेकिन उसको आपने डिक्लेयर नहीं किया, ओके, विदाउट वैलिड डॉक्यूमेंट्स, मतलब आप बिना बिल के, बिना इनवॉइस के आप सप्लाई करते हो उस जगह पे, तो फिर क्या होगा? तो ऑफिसर के पास पावर है कि वो उस जगह पे जाके छानबीन करके कितना ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ है उसके ऊपर वो एस्टिमेट करके लायबिलिटी डाल सकता है आपके ऊपर। सो द प्रॉपर ऑफिसर शिल डिटरमाइन द अमाउंट ऑफ टैक्स पेबल ऑन सच गुड्स एज इफ सच गुड्स हैव बीन सप्लाइड बाय द रजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर। तो वो एस्टिमेट करके डिसाइड करके बोल सकता है कि आपको इतना टैक्स पे करना है। Sir, in case of any errors while maintaining these records, who will trace out? Will there be any scrutiny? Yes. So when a system is followed, the books of accounts and the records have to be maintained. If there is any mistake, the normal statutory audit is there, tax audit is there. Now, GST also has a provision for audit of the books of accounts. The officer can do the audit of your books of accounts, and during the process of audit, if any errors are found out, he can give a notice for that. So audit can be done by the GST officers as well. Now, additional records to be maintained by registered person, saying that apart from these general records, specific people like composition taxpayer, they're given special request to him saying that additional documents you have to maintain. Okay. Now, this is specific to certain kinds of people. So each category of people we'll discuss. First, we'll start with the category of composition dealer. So apart from normal registered person, a person who is registered under the composition scheme. Now this person will have to maintain the following records. What he has to maintain? He has to maintain stock of goods and details of tax. Because for him, input tax is not available, but his sales are relevant. So that's why he has to maintain the stock of the goods. So whatever is his goods, he has to maintain proper stock of it. Now, this goods will include account of stock in respect of goods received and supplied, goods which, and such account shall contain particulars of opening balance, receipt, supply, and closing stock. This is the normal opening stock, receipt, supply, and closing stock. But additionally, also he has to maintain the stock of the goods which has been lost, goods which are stolen, goods which are destroyed, and goods which is written off or which is giving off free, and the balance of stock line for raw materials, finished goods, scrap, and wastage. So, can you just tell me why should he maintain the details of goods which is disposed of by way of gift or free sample? See, other things we understand, whether it is lost or something, that is fine. So that he will get to know the closing stock. But why is this details of goods which are disposed by way of gift or free sample required? Yeah, other than a composition scheme. You're right, Anil. So normal composition scheme के लिए fine. He does not have to. This is by a dealer other than a composition. You're right. Thanks for highlighting that. So normal dealers, because composition dealers, they don't want to burden. So this is not for them. This is for a dealer other than a composition dealer. Sir, can he claim ITC in case of maintenance of goods in place other than as declared? The assessee has to pay tax on those goods as deemed supplied to registered person. Yes, even if he's maintaining the or he's taken any goods which is not at his registered office or at a place which is not registered, he can still claim the ITC. So the penalty will be that at such place you have maintaining the records, but you have not included in your registration certificate, so you'll get penalized for that. So Chauhan is saying for disposal by way of gift, why to call it as a turnover? No, it is not a turnover because supply under GST is when there is a consideration. So in case of gift or free sample, there is no consideration, so it is not a supply. But as rightly pointed out by your other friends, Sir, Section 17.5 and to reverse ITC. You're right. So Miss P and Ishan Bish has given correct answer to reverse the ITC. Of course, on this, you will not pay GST because there is no consideration. If there's no consideration, no GST. But Section 17.5, kindly recollect, my friends, that this 17.5 says that on any kind of goods which is issued by way of gift or free sample or which is lost, stolen or destroyed, their ITC will have to be reversed. So in such cases, ITC will get reversed. Then stock of goods. Next is details of tax. That is, he will have to maintain the details of tax payable. That is, what is the tax payable under 9.3 or 9.4? What is 9.3 or 9.4? Reverse charge. Correct? So whatever is the reverse charge tax payable, that has to be mentioned. What is the tax collected and paid? What is the tax he's collecting and paying? On the supply, what is the tax he's collecting and paying? That has to be mentioned. What is the input tax? Input tax credit claimed together with the register of tax invoice, credit notes, debit notes, delivery challan issued or received. All of this has to be maintained. That is, apart from sale and purchase, details of the stock and details of the taxes has to be mentioned by everybody. Sir, ITC related to supplier should be reversed in the portal, right? ITC related to the supplier, correct. So ITC related to supplies, which is to be reversed under section 17.5, has to be reversed in the register because otherwise your register will not tally. So you have to reverse in your register and the IT and the GST portal as well, correct. So both the places it has to get reversed. Okay. ब्रीफ ऑफ डिलीवरी चलान ठीक है तेज प्रकाश डिलीवरी चलान मींस और डॉक्यूमेंट कि आप सब सेव करते हो तब इनवॉइस रेज करते हो जब आप से स्टॉक ट्रांसफर करते हो एक ब्रांच से दूसरे ब्रांच में तब आप इनवॉइस रेज नहीं करोगे सो तब क्या करोगे, आप डिलीवरी चालान रेज करो। और एक इंस्टेंस बताता हूं जब आप डिलीवरी चालान रेज कर सकते हो। जब आप गुड्स किसी एक जॉब वर्कर को देते हो, करेक्ट, सेल तो नहीं हुआ है वो, क्योंकि वो जॉब वर्किंग करके फिर से लौटा देगा, करेक्ट। तब भी आप जो गुड्स मूव करोगे वो आप डिलीवरी चालान के बेसिस पे मूव करो, ठीक है। सो ऐसे दो इंस्टेंसेस मैंने एग्जांपल दिए, बाकी बहुत सारे इंस्टेंस ऐसे होते हैं जब आप गुड्स तो मूव करते हो लेकिन सेल नहीं हुआ रहता है। तो उस सभी इंस्टेंसेस में आप डिलीवरी चालान रेस कर सकते हो। डिलीवरी चालान विल एंश्योर दैट कि आप मूवमेंट कर रहे हो लेकिन सेल नहीं कर रहे हो। सो फॉर मूवमेंट इट इज इशूड, करेक्ट। फॉर मूवमेंट विदाउट अ सेल, टू बी मोर क्लियर, a delivery चालान is generated। ठीक है। देन जैसे हमने नॉन कॉम्पोजिशन पर्सन के लिए स्पेसिफिक डॉक्यूमेंट बोल दिया है, अभी एजेंट्स के लिए क्या डॉक्यूमेंट्स मेंशन करने चाहिए। तो एजेंट शुड मेंटेन अकाउंट्स डिपिक्टिंग द पर्टिकुलर्स ऑफ द ऑथराइजेशन रिसीव्ड, क्योंकि एक एजेंट है वो प्रिंसिपल के बिहाफ में ट्रांजैक्शन करता है। तो प्रिंसिपल को क्या करना चाहिए, या तो फिर एक अग्रीमेंट या तो फिर एक ऑथराइजेशन लेटर बनाना चाहिए। So particular of the authorization which is received by him from each principal to receive or supply goods, he has to maintain that. He has to maintain the particulars including description and value and quantity of goods or services received on behalf of every principal. First the authorization. सेकेंड, अगर वो 10 प्रिंसिपल्स का एजेंट है या फिर बहुत सारे प्रिंसिपल्स का एजेंट है, तो फिर हर एक प्रिंसिपल का क्या गुड्स मेंटेन किया, सेपरेट मेंटेन करना चाहिए। ही कैन नॉट डंप इट, ये पूरे गुड्स एक ही साथ डंप ऐसे नहीं कर सकता है, क्योंकि हर एक प्रिंसिपल का उसके साथ अग्रीमेंट अलग होता है। तो फिर अलग अलग प्रिंसिपल का अलग अलग डिटेल्स रहना चाहिए। नेक्स्ट, particulars including description, value and quantity of goods of services supplied on behalf of every principal। उसने जो जो सप्लाई किया है सर्विसेज का भी, ओके, ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज बोथ, बोथ सप्लाइड ऑन बिहाफ। वन इज जो प्रिंसिपल के बिहाफ पे गुड्स रिसीव करता है, और हर प्रिंसिपल के बिहाफ जो सप्लाई करता है, इंडिविजुअल प्रिंसिपल टू प्रिंसिपल सेपरेट रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करेगा। फिर डिटेल्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स फर्निश्ड टू एवरी प्रिंसिपल, जो वो लोका जो का वॉट एवर रिकॉर्ड्स, जो बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट्स वो प्रिंसिपल से रिसीव करेगा, उसका रिकॉर्ड्स भी उसे मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा कि वो जो प्रिंसिपल को खाता देता है, दैट आल्सो हैज टू बी मेंटेन। देन टैक्स पेड ऑन receipts or on supply of goods or services affected on behalf of every principal। जो कभी कभी प्रिंसिपल को भी एजेंट को भी प्रिंसिपल के बिहाफ पे टैक्स पे करना पड़ता है। तो if the agent does any transaction, yeah, any taxes he pays on behalf of the principal, that also has to be maintained. So any tax paid on receipts or supply of goods on behalf of the every principal, he has to maintain separate records। Got it? So agent के लिए ये additional records maintain करने पड़ेंगे। One is the authorization, receipt of goods, payment of goods, receipt of goods, supply of goods separately for each principal, then whatever records is giving to the principal, and the taxes paid on behalf of the principal. These are the details which a agent has to maintain। ठीक है। Next, what are the records to be maintained by a manufacturer? Manufacturer तो by purchase and sale of goods करता ही है, उसका records maintain करेगा। उसके अलावा additional records what he will maintain shall maintain monthly production accounts। तो इसको monthly production accounts बनाना पड़ेगा of the quantity details of the raw materials or services used, quantitative details and quantitative details of the goods so manufactured। So raw materials के details और गुड्स जो मैन्युफैक्चर किए इंक्लूडिंग वेस्ट एंड बाई प्रोडक्ट्स, उसके भी रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे। सो इसको क्वांटिटेटिव डिटेल्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे ऑफ द रॉ मटेरियल्स और सर्विसेज यूज्ड एंड क्वांटिटेटिव डिटेल्स ऑफ द गुड्स विच इज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग। ठीक है। So these are the additional records which a manufacturer will have to maintain। So each category of people will have different records to be maintained. So next we'll see what has to be maintained by a service provider and further such categories. Why waste and byproduct? Very good question. क्योंकि waste and byproduct also is liable to GST. क्योंकि उसके ऊपर आप ITC तो claim कर चुके हो, but you are on a waste, you will be selling it. Waste is a there is a market for that also, correct? And reverse charge is attracted. So, and byproducts, suppose you're manufacturing, say, sugar out of sugar cane. The byproduct is the bagasse. So, that bagasse is also sold. मतलब जो गन्ने का वेस्ट और रहता है, that is also a byproduct. So, while you're extracting sugar from the sugar cane, this bagasse also is sold. उसे कहते हैं bagasse. So that's why you have to have a record of this also, because that is also payable. GST is payable on that supply also. So waste got disposed. In that case, yeah. So waste, if it is getting disposed, if it is normal waste, then no GST. If it is abnormal waste, then GST will be liable. So that's why you have to maintain a proper records of the waste, so that what is the industry standards of that waste, to get to know that you will have to maintain these records. क्योंकि manufacturing में बहुत सारे घपले हो सकते हैं. To avoid that, government is saying maintain these records. Okay. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes here and we'll come back. Case of abnormal loss, ITC is reversed or we need to pay GST on the loss. So see, generally what happens is on any loss of goods, ITC has to be reversed. Correct? But if it is normal loss, say in terms of transporting of petroleum products, when you move the goods, it will be 100 kgs. When it reaches, it will become say 99 kgs. So normal loss is allowed in that industry, say up to 2%. So up to 2 kgs is fine. So we can justify saying that even this loss is a normal loss, so I don't have to reverse ITC. But if you show a loss of 5 kgs, right, in your record, if you show loss of 5 kgs, then they'll get to know that it is a abnormal loss. On that, ITC can be said to be reversed. So on abnormal loss, which is loss beyond the standard limits, their ITC will have to be reversed, is what I'm saying. Okay. Sir, Tata Glucose Company nearby us is selling expired product to acid manufacturing company. Oh, okay. So we thought expired goods has to be destroyed, but they are sold to acid manufacturing company. So it is a sale of goods, and it is a sale, and they have to classify it under scrap and charge GST what is applicable for the scrap for this product, because it is no more a glucose. Since it is expired, they cannot sell it as a glucose. Correct? So they will be doing a illegal activity if they sell it as glucose. So they will have to sell it as a scrap, and what is the GST rate for scrap that they have to apply. So Tata, if he's selling glucose, Tata, if he's selling the expired glucose, then they will have to charge GST and pay GST on it. Okay. So, Asta, your question is not related to the topic, so I'll not take it now, so it will otherwise confuse everyone. In what instances agent will pay tax on behalf of the principal, right? So we have seen Schedule 1, right? In Schedule 1, if there is any movement of goods by the principal to agent, right? When it is an invoice raised by the agent in his own name, or agent raises an invoice in the name of principal, and this transaction between principal and agent is covered under Schedule 1, right? Their agent will pay the taxes when he's raising the invoice in the name of principal. So he's a sole agent, or he's an agent who is there covered under Schedule 1. Then in such instances, the agent will pay tax on behalf of the principal. Next, for a service provider, a person who's providing services, he will have to maintain the following account showing quantitative details of goods used in the provision of services. Okay, like we know works contract. Works contract is a person who is providing works contract services. So this works contract provider, he will have to procure the goods and supply the services. So for a service provider also, we need to understand that goods are getting involved. So a provider of service also will have usage of the goods. So he will have to keep the quantitative details of the goods which is being used. Like if it is a chartered accountant office, he may have a stationery, he may have a quantity of papers. Maybe impractical, but the law says that yes, you have to maintain the quantitative details of such goods which you are using in provision of services. You have to maintain, because you will have to maintain. So for papers, it is fine. But if it is costly items, say if some machinery, if you are procuring, like any kind of printers, laptops, they are all goods. So you have to maintain those details, because later on when you dispose them off, you buy a laptop, use it for your businesses, use it for your services. When you sell, GST is to payable. So that's why to have control on such goods, you have to maintain quantitative details of goods used in the provision of services. Then details of input services utilized. Whatever are the input services which you are utilizing for providing your outward services, both has to be maintained. details of input services utilized and the services supplied. So on which you are availing the credit or you are utilizing the services that you have to maintain and the services what you're supplying, all that records is definitely very generic, right? कि सर्विस प्रोवाइडर को क्या चाहिए, सर्विस जो रिसीव कर रहा है उसका डिटेल्स चाहिए और जो सर्विस सप्लाई कर रहा है उसका डिटेल्स चाहिए, ये मेंटेन करेगा वो. और फिर क्वांटिटेटिव डिटेल्स ऑफ गुड्स जो भी वो प्रोविजन के लिए यूज करेगा उसको भी डिटेल्स मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. ये तीन चीजें सर्विस प्रोवाइडर को मेंटेन करनी पड़ेगी. Re-explain second point, details of input services utilized. So when I'm providing services, what will be my major cost? Employee cost. And I may take services of other suppliers. So for salary, I don't have to maintain records. Payroll records are sufficient. And there is no no GST involved in it. So that's fine. But apart from payroll, I may take services from others. From whom I've taken service? What is his GST number? What is the nature of service? That details I have to maintain. That is point number 2, details of input services utilized for providing my output service. Could you explain first one? Quantitative details of goods. Quantitative details of goods is any goods which you are buying, using it, and then you're providing services. So that details of the goods which you are using has to be maintained is what the first point is saying. Provision of service means providing the service. When a architect provides the service of architecture, it means he is providing the service. Provision of service is plural of providing the service. So for providing that service is called as provision of service. Clear? Next, additional record which is to be maintained by a works contractor. I said in services, I was giving you explanation for a works contract because that is bigger service. But the law mandates that for a works contract, special records have to be maintained. What is that records? Every name and address of the person on whose behalf the works contract is executed. That is, who is your customer. Then description, value, and quantity of the goods or services which is received for the execution of the works contract. Then description, value, that is of quantity of the goods or services utilized in the execution. One is receiving and utilizing. Here there is difference. Any description, value, and quantity of goods which you are receiving, keeping in stock, and second is what you are utilizing from that stock. Both has to be maintained. So it's like a production. You have something in your warehouse, you have used it for your production, then the production record has to be maintained. Similarly, works contractor. Now, who is a works contract? A person who is doing works contract is defined under the law, who is doing any construction, repair, maintenance, or any kind of these activities for a immovable property. For a movable property, you're not a works contract. For a immovable property, they say construction of building, construction of apartments, construction of a commercial complex, construction of dams, lakes. So they're all big projects. तो उसके लिए अलग से records maintain करना पड़ेगा, which is name of the person किसके behalf पे आप works contract कर रहे हो, description of the goods which you have purchased, which you have physically received, and which you are utilizing for the works contract job. Then the details of payment received in respect of each of the works contract. जैसे आपने bill of supply किया है, bill of material raise किया है, बिल इनवॉइस रेज किया है एंड व्हाट अमाउंट यू हैव रिसीव्ड, या एडवांस में कुछ अमाउंट आया है तो उसके रिकॉर्ड भी. देन नेम एंड एड्रेस ऑफ द सप्लायर्स फ्रॉम whom you have received the goods. All of this details has to be maintained. Understood works contract? Priya Mishra, did you understand the definition of works contract now? So works contract has a huge implication under GST because a lot of taxes are paid by the works contract because a lot of work they do, lot of real estate projects and a lot of infrastructure projects takes place. So that's the reason there is a special requirement of maintaining special records by a works contractor. Then additional records to be maintained by custodian or clearing and forwarding agent. So when you import something, you cannot import it directly. If you are importing directly, you will need the help of a clearing and forwarding agent. They're also called as customs agent. This customs agents, what they do is they clear the goods on your behalf. Now, when they clear the goods on your behalf, they have to maintain some special records. So any person who is having custody over the goods in the capacity of a carrier or a clearing and forwarding agent for delivery or dispatch thereof to a recipient on behalf of any registered person shall maintain true and correct records in respect of such goods handled by him because he is handling my goods. इंपोर्ट तो मैंने किया है लेकिन कस्टम्स पे फुल्ली ही विल हैंडल इट. Who will handle it? This clearing and forwarding agent. So he has to maintain proper records of what is the goods he's cleared and how he is dispatched to the customers. And he shall produce these records to the officer as and when required. Agar I have imported some goods and something which is come for assessment of my records, apart from my books of accounts, the officer can go and ask the clearing and forwarding agent saying that what is the goods you have imported on my behalf and what you have dispatched to me. Right? So that's why these clearing and forwarding agents will have to clear and have proper records saying that how much goods they have cleared from the customs and how much they have dispatched to me. Who are these agents? They are called as CHA agent, customs house agents, or they're also called as clearing and forwarding agents. The point, yeah. E is for goods and services received for providing works contract. E is for names and address of the suppliers from whom we received goods. Correct. So for a works contractor, he will also subcontract his work to others because he may not be in a position to execute it fully. So he will give it to another subcontractor or other laborers or other suppliers. So such suppliers' details he will have to make. The name and address of the person on whose behalf the works contract is executed means the owners. Correct. So if you're buying an apartment, you will buy from a builder. Now, this builder will give work to a works contractor. So for the works contractor, the ultimate customer is not the person who's giving the work. The builder has given him the work. So he is the person whose details he will have to maintain. Like Prestige, Shobha Properties, they are giving the work to a works contractor. So for the works contractor, he will mention the details of the project and not the individual house buyer. Clear on works contract? Can brigade also be in works contract? Builder, if generally no, because these big builders, they do not provide works contract. They provide construction of complex services. Okay. So they are not works contract because they are not actually doing the work. The person like Dilip Buildcon, you'll see Shapurji and Palunji builders, if they are getting subcontract from others, then they are a works contractor. But if they are developing something, then they are developers, they are not works contractors. Additional records to be maintained by a operator of a warehouse, as we had said that like a operator of a warehouse, he will have to maintain even if he is not registered. This is very important because generally we feel a registered person has to be maintained, but for a warehouse keeper and a transporter, if such persons are not registered, still they have to maintain the following records. What they have to maintain? They have to maintain records of transporter of goods and persons who owns or operates any warehouse. The goods shall be stored in a manner in which they are identifiable item wise and owner wise. This details has to be maintained by them. So in case of works contract, the provider, he provides lot many products. Will there be any special treatment regarding ITC returns, etc.? I didn't understand your question, Golti. Is there any special treatment? No. Normal treatment, a works contractor will charge GST. So he can receive goods and he returns something. So he will reduce it from the ITC. No special treatment as such. Normal treatment, whatever is there, that has to be followed by him. And if a person or a transporter who is not registered, he will have to take a enrollment. He should not take a registration because he is not liable for registration, but he will have to take a enrollment. If such persons are not already registered, then they have to do a enrollment in form GST ENR1. So they have to apply for enrollment and they will get a unique common enrollment number. Okay. And the person enrolled as aforesaid in any other state shall be deemed to be enrolled in the state. अगर किसी और state में भी enrolled है, तो इस state में भी enrollment काफी है. That enrollment is sufficient. One enrollment for all the states is sufficient. Okay. The specific records to be maintained by a transporter, a person who is engaged in transporting goods shall maintain records of goods transported, delivered, and goods stored in transit, along with the GST and of the registered consignor and consignee. For each of the transporter's branches, he will have to maintain this. Means, so centralized enrollment, correct. And on the builder cannot be a works contractor if they themselves do as they are called as developers. That's true. But if the builder give work to others as subcontractor, then the person or the entity will be called as a works contractor, and works contractor will give details of the builder. Exactly right. Okay. So coming to transporter now. Transporter will have to maintain the details of who is handed over goods to him, from which place and where he delivered it. Okay. Now the owner of a warehouse. So transporter will just maintain it. Owner of a warehouse will maintain books of accounts with respect to the period for which the particular goods remains in his warehouse. So till the period when it is maintained in his warehouse, he will have to provide the record. Once it is gone, then he should not give it, right? Because he shall maintain books of accounts with respect to the period for which the particular remains in his warehouse. Because some goods will come, some goods will go. He cannot maintain past records. Whatever are the goods presently lying in his warehouse, only that details he can give. That he can give details of relating to dispatch, movement, receipt, and disposal of such goods. So if 100 quantity have come, 20 is dispatched, balance is 80. That records he has to maintain saying that 100 came, 20 went off, 80 is the balance. Okay. Then the owner or operator of the godown shall store the goods in such a manner that they can be identified. Same, they should maintain the records in such a manner where item wise and owner wise you can distinguish. So if there is like a Amazon godown, Amazon warehouse is so huge that hundreds of sellers keep their goods there. They have to keep separate bifurcation saying that these goods belonging to seller A, second rack belonging to seller B, then seller C. Each seller wise, they have to maintain separate place and shall facilitate any physical verification or inspection by the proper officer. So if any officer comes and they find that one of their sellers on Amazon, I'm just giving an example because we can visualize that Amazon warehouse should give access to the GST officer if he wants to do any verification. Clear? So can you explain enrollment? Right. So what the law says is that any operator of a warehouse or a godown and a transporter, right? They have to maintain proper records and they have to generally be registered. But for some reason, say their limit is less and they have not registered. So if they are not registered, then the law says that you have to have at least a enrollment number. So GST registration is there, but for these people, there is a special enrollment number. So these people will have to get a GST enrollment number. Okay, they should obtain a unique enrollment number by applying electronically on the GST portal through a form called GST ENR1. Okay, they have to apply through GST ENR1 on the GST common portal, where the transporter has obtained a unique enrollment number in some state and he wants to do transaction in another state, he can do it with the first enrollment number itself. Okay, and then he shall not be eligible to use any of the GST number. As long as he has a enrollment number, GSTN number, he will not get. Once he gets the GSTN number, then enrollment number has to get cancelled. Right? How do they manage? So how do they manage these go downs and things? No, they charge rent, right? And they should have all electronic systems. Once they have all digitalized systems, then it becomes easier. Yes. Does Amazon maintain records? Yes. Amazon does maintain all the records because it also has a seamless ERP system wherein all the records of the suppliers it will maintain and it will give reports to the suppliers also because it's more important for them for logistics because if some stock goes down, they have to intimate the seller that your stocks are getting sold, but your stock at our go down is less. So they have to intimate that also. For that purpose, they will maintain it, and that purpose will serve for GST also. And the GST will take the record from them saying that for each seller, how much is the stock which is moved. Will it be complex to maintain item-wise records? If you have a proper software, then it will not be complex. If you do not have a proper software, or you try to maintain in Excel, then it will become complex, not otherwise. Well, what are the various records we understood? Now, the important aspects which has to be considered are various questions which got raised. We will see and how it is answered through circulars. First is circular 47, which says the person who is involved in auction, either as a principal or auctioneer, shall declare the warehouse or other places as additional place of business in case such places are meant for storage of goods. Now there is an auctioneer. He is getting goods from the principal and his work is to auction those goods. Now there could be two things, that you auction on behalf of the principal or you auction it yourself. That is, you buy the goods and you will sell it on auction. When you do it on yourself, you're an auctioneer, you're buying the goods and giving it on auction, then it is your responsibility. You should have registered and you should store those goods at the registered place. Or if you're only doing auctioning services and you'll get commission from the principal, then you don't have to register. Principal will have to register. You have to pay GST only on the commission what you're getting from the principal. With that background, now you read this. The person involved in action, either as a principal or auctioneer, shall declare the warehouse or other places as additional place of business in case such place are meant for storage of goods. The principal and the auctioneer shall also maintain the books of accounts in terms of section 35 at such place. However, it is clarified that the books of accounts may be maintained at the principal place of business in case of any difficulties faced in maintaining the books of accounts at such additional place of business upon intimating the jurisdictional officer. Now, when the person does any auction at a specified place, he will have to include that as an additional place of business because goods will be kept there. The people who come for auction, they want to check it and then want to either buy those goods or verify those goods, correct? Because without verification, they will not come for auction. So you will have some specified place mentioned in the auction letters that any person want to verify, they can verify that place. Now that place, since he is storing the goods and transaction of supply is happening, so the law says that you have to declare that place as an additional place of business. Okay, clear? Because that place is where the goods are kept and sale will happen. So that's an additional place of business. Now, when we said additional place of business, we said that books of accounts for that additional place of business has to be maintained there. Correct? But in case of auction, for some reason, you're not able to maintain books of accounts over there, then the circular is saying, fine, you inform your jurisdictional officer saying that that is the additional place of business, but the books will be maintained at the principal place of business. And he will approve it. So you don't have to get approval also, you have to just intimate. Okay. You have to only intimate the jurisdictional officer upon intimation. It doesn't say approval. So just intimate the jurisdictional officer that for that additional place of business, the record will be maintained at the principal place. That is sufficient. श्योर तेज प्रकाश, ये क्या बोलता है सर्कुलर कि जब ऑक्शनर ऑक्शन करता है तब उसे गुड्स जो है एक जगह पे रखनी पड़ती है वेरिफिकेशन के लिए. जो भी ऑक्शन के लिए आएंगे वो उस जगह को, उस चीजों को वेरीफाई करेंगे. तो जब वो उस जगह को, उस चीजों को वेरीफाई करेंगे, तब उस जहां पर भी आप गुड्स रखते हो उस जगह को आपको एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस डिक्लेयर करना पड़ेगा. तो जब मैं एडिशनल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस उसको डिक्लेयर करूंगा तब मुझे उस जगह पे रिकॉर्ड्स भी मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे. लेकिन ऑप्शन के लिए मुझे रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने के लिए पॉसिबल नहीं है. तब लॉ बोलता है कि ठीक है, आप प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस पे उसके रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन कर लो, वो भी कंप्लायंस के बरोबर हो जाएगा. It can be auction house or it can be elsewhere. Suppose it's a huge machinery which you cannot bring it to the auction house, so it can be the place where it is already there itself, so that the transportation charge can be saved. So it can be the auction house or it can be elsewhere. Sir, it is written that once obtained unique enrollment number, then shall not be eligible to use any of the GSTN number, which means he cannot take GSTN. Correct. So it means that when he takes the enrollment number, he cannot tell that, okay, enrollment bhi hai, GSTN bhi hai. So if he is taken an enrollment, then he should not take GST registration. But if he takes GST registration, then he has to cancel the enrollment. That is the meaning of it. Correct. Only why auctioneer? Because auctioneers do this auction for a temporary time period, MSP. It will not be a permanent place of business. So that's why for auctioneers, they have given this exception. For others, you have to maintain the books of additional place of business there itself. Yes, enrollment is there, then the limit exceeds, then enrollment को cancel करो, because enrollment है उसे cancel करेंगे तब ही GST नंबर मिलेगा, because अगर enrollment है तब GST नंबर नहीं मिलेगा. तो उसका ऑप्शन क्या है? एनरोलमेंट को कैंसिल करो, तब आपको नया GST मिल सकता है. Can auctioneer claim ITC of procurement goods if he is doing in an independent basis? If the auctioneer is buying some goods and selling it, then he can claim ITC. But auctioneer is not buying; he is taking only commission. Then our auction charges. Then he cannot claim ITC. Is there any benefit of other enrollment than GSTN? No benefit. It's a compulsion, Shohan, कि आप अगर ट्रांसपोर्टर हो, वेयर हाउस हो और गोडाउन कीपर हो, तो आपको मिनिमम एनरोलमेंट चाहिए ही चाहिए. अगर आपके पास GST नहीं है तो आपको एनरोलमेंट लेना ही पड़ेगा. देयर इज नो ऑप्शन. तो आपको बेनिफिट कंपेयर करने पे कुछ फायदा नहीं मिलेगा. करेक्ट. एनरोलमेंट नंबर इज अप टू दैट टाइम व्हेन योर टर्नओवर इज नॉट क्रॉसिंग द थ्रेशोल्ड. एक बार थ्रेशोल्ड क्रॉस हो गया तो आपको GST लेना ही पड़ेगा, तब आप एनरोलमेंट को कैंसिल कर देंगे. Okay. In case of storing of goods in godown of transporter, next circular में जो clarify किया है, the transporter's godown has to be declared as an additional place of business by the recipient. The transporter and the recipient shall maintain books of accounts in terms of Section 35 at such places. However, it is clarified that the books of accounts in relation to goods stored at transporter's godown, that is the recipient taxpayer's additional place of business by the recipient taxpayer, may be maintained by him at his principal place of business. Similarly, AB kaha hai, like how the auction we said, similarly where you maintain goods as a transporter's place, usko bhi sometimes you may have to give an additional place of business if you're storing goods at the transporter's place of business. So for that accounts also, you don't have to maintain it. You can maintain it at your principal place of business. Clear? Now, how are the records to be maintained? Every records can be maintained either manually by the registered person, shall be serially numbered. If you're maintaining manually, have a proper serial number. If you're maintaining electronically, then may keep the registered person may keep and maintain such accounts and other particulars in the electronic form stored on any electronic device, and records shall be authenticated by a digital signature. So if you are taking any document print from an electronic record, it should be authenticated to a digital signature. And when records are maintained in electronic form, proper electronic backups should be there, so that in case of any natural calamity, you cannot complain saying that no, my records have been vanished. You should have a proper backup, because it will be your responsibility. Then the registered person maintaining records should give it on demand whenever the officer asks, either in hard copy or in electronic readable form. Where the accounts or records are stored electronically, he shall on demand provide the details of such files, passwords, and explanation for the codes. He cannot say that I will not give access. He has to give access. And where the accounts or records are stored electronically by any registered person, he shall provide the details of files, password, and explanation for access or any other information which is required. Okay, he has to give that. Then no entry shall be erased. Any entry shall not be erased or overwritten. And incorrect entries hai, then shall be scored out. You have to call it as cancelled. You should not throw it off. So if in an invoice, if you made a mistake, you cannot just tear it off. You have to mention cancel and keep it. Otherwise, what will happen is you will tell no, it is lost, but on that you would have charged somebody GST. So if anything is cancelled, that cancel record also has to be maintained. Similarly, if any record is kind of incorrect, then it should be scored out. Scored out मतलब scratch कर देना चाहिए, but you should not throw it off. Where the registers and other documents are maintained electronically, a log of every entry edited and delayed should be maintained. जैसे even in the Companies Act, we have this requirement of audit trail. So any entry, who has done it, and if something is deleted or something is edited, who has done it, why they have done it, such log should be maintained. Maintained the registered person together with all the invoices, bill of supply, credit note, etc. shall be preserved for a period as provided in section 36. That is, shall be kept for a period as provided in section 36. And 36 says that you have to maintain the records for a period of 72 months from the end of the financial year. So this is the period that every registered person required to maintain books of accounts shall maintain it for a period of 72 months from the due date of furnishing of annual return. And if you have gone for appeal or anything, then you have to maintain it for a period of 1 year after the final disposal of appeal. So normal cases, you have to maintain for 72 months from the end of the financial year. That is from the end of the annual return. 72 months matlab 6 years. So for 23-24, the annual returns due date is December 24. Correct? So 6 years from then, that is till December 2030, you have to maintain records for 23-24. So calculate for every year. So for 72 months, you have to maintain the books of accounts. And consequence for failure, if you fail to maintain the books of accounts, then the officer will proceed as assessment under section 73 or 74, and he will charge taxes and interest and penalty. He will determine the tax what is payable in the absence of books of accounts, and he will do a assumption and then tax it. So it is better that you give books of accounts. If you don't have books of accounts, then he will do his own calculation. Then justifying that will be very difficult. Yes, audit trail is mandatory for GST accounts. 73, 74 is not in our syllabus, but you have to understand that 73 or 74 means determination of tax by the officer. That is the provisions of section 73 or 74. Mutatis means same, similar. So mutatis mutandis means जो भी 73 के लिए है वो 74 के लिए भी apply होगा subject to some changes. That is the meaning of mutatis mutandis. $72 months. तो जो भी रिकॉर्ड से हमने बात किया है वो कितने साल तक मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा, उसे कहा है कि 72 मंथ तक मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. 72 मंथ कब से स्टार्ट होगा? फ्रॉम द ड्यू डेट ऑफ फर्निशिंग एनुअल रिटर्न. जैसे अभी हम 24-25 का चल रहा है, सो 24-25 का एनुअल रिटर्न्स जो है वो कब तक खत्म होगा? 24-25 का एनुअल रिटर्न का ड्यू डेट है दिसंबर 25. सो दिसंबर 25 से 6 साल, दैट इज टिल दिसंबर 31 तक आपको मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. और फिर ये बताता है कि जो भी आप रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन अगर अपील के लिए जाते हो, रिवीजन के लिए जाते हो, किसी भी लेवल पे, अपलेट लेवल, रिविजनल तक काफी लेवल्स हैं, जब भी आप अपील पे जाते हो तब तक अपील डिस्पोज नहीं होता, तब तक मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. उसके 1 साल बाद तक वो रिकॉर्ड्स आपको मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे. जैसे समझ लीजिए 17-18 के लिए आप अपील पे गए हो, ऑफिसर ने नोटिस दिया, आप उससे सेटिस्फाइड नहीं हो तो आप अपील पे जा रहे हो, तो वो अपील जब तक डिस्पोज होता है तब तक उस साल के रिकॉर्ड्स मेंटेन करने पड़ेंगे. तब ये 72 मंथ्स काम के नहीं है, क्योंकि अपील काफी साल भी चल सकते हैं. तो जब तक अपील खत्म होता है और उसके 1 साल बाद तक उस रिकॉर्ड्स को आपको मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा. Okay. After expiry, can it be destroyed? Yes. After 72 months, it can be destroyed. Clear? Eh? Any more questions before we get into the MCQs? Okay. First MCQ. Amendments. Priya Mishra, in this chapter, you're lucky enough that there are no amendments in this chapter. Books of accounts has to be maintained like that. There is one. Which one is that? I think that will be in e-way bill. Please let me know if there is any other thing because I couldn't find it. Under section 35, subsection 6. Okay. 11.26 method. Right. So that is only 74A is written. Yeah. So, क्या हुआ 73 74 as we know is only till 23 24 and from 24 onwards it is 74A. So wherever you find the provision of 74, they 73 or 74 that will get replaced with 74A. That is the only thing. It's just the mentioning of replacement of 73 and 74. Correct. That's the only thing, nothing else. So wherever it is 74, 73 or 74, there you have to read it as 74A. हाँ सर अभी ठीक है. Sure. If the appeal ended before expiry of 72 months, then will be 72 months. Yes. If the appeal is entered before 72 months, then still your normal 72 months will apply. So if there is appeal, then it can get extended. So minimum period which you have to maintain is 72 months from the end of from the due date of annual return. Right. The correct option here is B. Second question. Good. C, of course, the provisions of 74A will get replaced, but answer will be C itself. Who will conduct GST audit? Will there be any separate audit as part of internal standard? No, separate. GST audit will be done by a GST officer, or he can authorize a chartered accountant or a cost and works accountant to do the audit. Your option is B. Records of transported goods, deliveries, and the GST of the consignors and consignees for each branch. Option B, right. As a hard copy or in electronically readable format with passwords and accessible. Very true. No, here there's a mixed reaction. Everything seems to be correct. No. The fifth answer is D. Composition scheme is unsure about which records to maintain because stock of goods, they don't have to maintain. Tax invoice for out of supply, they don't have to maintain. I mean, they have to maintain. So which one is which they don't have to maintain is input tax credit because they cannot claim the credit. Correct. Can they maintain? Can they claim ITC? They cannot, right? That's it. They do not issue tax invoice. Yeah, they do not issue tax invoice. That is for invoice for outward supply. Might be bill of supply for the outward supply. In material, there is ITC claim. What do you mean material? There ITC claim. They not necessary. They will claim. No, so they will not claim it. B also, right. B also can be case. So this should be only invoices for outward supply or bill of supply for outward supply. True. Most of you have given a correct answer. B. Ensure such entry is serially numbered. Answer is A. ENR1. Enrollment we had discussed. No, it will be in form ENR1. Why people are saying C and D? Oh, okay. Fine, Ishan. So I stand corrected for that question. So he's not required to maintain stock of goods and details of tax. Okay. I'll change that question. A, B. How can it be A and B? It is A. Ensure records are regularly backed up and can be restored if lost. Nine option is right. It is B. Names and address of the clients, description of material used, and payment details of the each contract. Question number 10. Correct. Quantity of raw materials. Question number 11. Right. Answer is B for this. Some people were saying A. Why? If they have multiple locations, they have to maintain at each additional place of business, right? Only at principle is not correct. True. Question number 10, the answer is C. Question number 12, the answer is C. Yeah, I think Thursday I'll let you know by the board of studies, but as of now, there is no class on Thursday. Sure, I'll upload this notes and assignment. You have few more MCQs. Please see if you can find out the answer and then check whether your guess was right. Okay. So thank you very much for your timely questions, and we will see you in the next class then. Thank you. Yeah, 12th will not be class of GST.